Thanks everyone for joining us for TAG Cafeteria today. It's May 6th, 2020. We're here with our theme today of Community Coronavirus Response Update with Mary Elliott and Jeremiah McCoy from Bellingham Makerspace and Ryan Shupe from Coronavirus Virtual Tools. I'm sure I butchered that. We're gonna just kind of have an update on what's going on to sort of be aware of what our folks in the community are doing and ways we could help and raise awareness for that. And we're going to do just a brief update on TAG news and announcements. And at the top here, I'll introduce our guests, and we'll of course get more into it. But we have Mary from the Makerspace. Want to give us a hello and a brief welcome? You have to unmute and just
Oh
say
no,
hello.
that was my speaking.
Perfect.
That was it. I'm a mime today.
Awesome. This is going to go great then. Jeremiah McCoy.
Yep. Hello.
Thanks, Jeremiah. And Ryan.
Yep.
Hello.
You missed the. You got to talk more on the. Otherwise, the speaker view doesn't get to you.
Yeah. How's it going?
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward to cutting that part out and this part in the previous recording. Okay, great. So just on the top, I wanted to fill in folks on briefly some TAG news as well as events of the week. The TAG news continues to be just the launch of our programs, and this will be brief. Our TAG consulting program and the TAG mentorship program. The consulting program continues to be the focus on supporting our nonprofit organizations in sort of this wildly disturbing and disruptive time, and not really understanding what to do. So our goal really is to just help where we can. That's going well. We also have launched TAG Mentorship, which is a mentor and mentee application process that the membership committee is working on matching folks, and that's we're sort of excited to receive a bunch of those applications and start matching folks this week and next. And yeah, we're excited for this sort of pilot process and to relaunch in the fall. And that will continue out throughout the spring and summer as folks sort of roll in. And if you are interested in becoming a mentee or mentor, just check our application process, and we look forward to your participation. Events of the week, I wanted to highlight Linux Fest Northwest that's happening right now. It's a virtual event, and that is virtual. That is linuxfestnorthwest.org, and the 2020 event is live. There's some pre-recorded videos and discussion there to check out. We also have Women in Tech happening right this second, so if you're listening to this, you missed it. And that group returns with Andrea Frost as the organizer, and we'll iron things out in the future as we go. And then we have the BLUG meeting this week is features yours truly on Thursday night at 7 p.m. That sounds right. I see Garth nodding, so I know for sure that I'm accurate. I'll be talking about the Pinebook Pros, which is basically a little Raspberry Pi laptop, and also TAG has acquired sort of a mini army of them, and our goal is to do some cool STEM educational projects and curriculum ideas. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then at the same time, we have Bellingham Codes on Thursday night, and so on. So if you are wondering what is going on, you can check the TAG website at tagnw.org/events, and we have a new calendar coming up, which is sort of being populated throughout this month for a full launch next, which is at calendar, tagnw.org/calendar. So you can check that out. The new calendar has this sweet ability of adding a calendar meeting invitation to your actual calendar, and that's wow, huge, wildly technological advanced for us. So yeah, so looking forward to that. We're also doing user submissions for events, and that'll roll out this month as we sort of refine the process, and we're looking forward to getting more details in these sort of monthly events that are easier to maintain. So there's that. And then our recurring event, in addition to TAG Cafeteria, is the happy hour on Monday nights at 5 p.m. So we enjoy saying, let's all social distance apart together, and share our favorite beverage, alcoholic or not, you know, and just hang out and have fun. And those events are not recorded. And we encourage folks to just pretend like we're meeting at a bar and enjoying ourselves. So there's that. We'll talk more about uh, the topic today, which is coronavirus update in our community, and I'm gonna basically segue into that process. Um, just as an announcement, if anybody has event updates they'd like to share, or really any other news announcements that you'd like to share, you're welcome to contribute them in these TAG Cafeteria events. So just arrange that with me ahead of time, and we'll call you up. So with that, I'd like to bring in Mary and Jeremiah from the Makerspace to give us a great update on what's going on with the Makerspace and in your sort of volunteers and your related communities. And let's um, do that, and we'll chat with Ryan afterwards. So Mary and Jeremiah.
Yeah, well, this time actually, both Jeremiah and I think, can probably be unmuted at the same time since
Whoa.
we're in different buildings. That's a change.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple exciting things, for, gosh, has it been almost 2 months now, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I think so, because let's see, when the quarantine started was right around the
Well,
beginning of
official quarantine
May.
started, yeah, like the second week in May, but we had already kind of launched
Yeah.
what we were working on.
It was like March 11th when we.
Yeah. So so basically, I guess I'm gonna say 6 weeks. Might be 7. I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's been about 2 months, I think.
okay.
Yeah.
So for
In experience time, that's something like 3 years.
Yeah.
it feels like it.
Sure does.
Yeah, we've been helping coordinate some of the local folks that so very kindly are sewing cloth masks and kind of set up that request distribution channel. And that's worked really, really well. And so I keep saying I'm going to do a full tally, and I just never do it. I do know that it's over 15,000 cloth masks have now been distributed, but that actually was a tally from last week. So it's probably quite a bit more than that. And of course, those are only the cloth masks that have been pushed through the distribution channel that we are doing. There are lots of other mask making groups and individuals in town that are doing it, and they're doing it just on their own. And so that's like just a really beautiful story, I think, showing how community members have stepped up to just really care for your friends and neighbors. And it's really great to see. The other kind of nice thing to note, I think, is that the local business Oyster Creek Canvas is not only sewing both cloth masks and also some of the they're called tier 2 isolation gowns. So there's a couple different level, just like there's the cloth mask and then there's the N95 mask, right? There's like just a gown, and then there's like the tier 2 and tier 3 gowns. And that fabric actually has been pretty hard to source, and luckily Kat from Oyster Creek was able to get some to make some tier 2 gowns. So that's pretty impressive that she was able to do that. The cloth masks that Oyster Creek Canvas is making, they are selling at a very, very reasonable price, kind of in bulk. So to larger organizations that may need like 250 or 500 masks. So that's been a great help that allows the smaller folks, and then also the Makerspace, to just fill orders of like 100 or 20 or that kind of thing. So that's been really great. The food co-op has stepped up, and they are actually carrying Oyster Creek's masks. so other individuals can go there to purchase them. And what that has done is that's allowed Oyster Creek Canvas to keep up and running and continually pay their employees and their bills and everything. They haven't had to furlough anyone, which is really terrific. So I guess that's the cloth mask angle. And then Jeremiah, you.
Yeah, I can talk about the production side. Actually, I looked up the date while you were talking about when this all started, and it was March 23rd. March 23rd was the day after Tyler came in when we had our board meeting. Tyler's one of the county council members. And that was the week that the county council and Red Brown and the people at the hospital said, "Oh my God,
Officially,
this is
after.
real,
Right.
and we need you to stay open and start mass producing as much of these face shields and gowns and whatever else you can make, because there's a shortage of everything, basically." And
It seems longer than that, though.
it seems longer than that, but yeah, it's only been like 6 weeks. Anyway, in that 6 weeks, what we've done I guess it was about the first 2 weeks were sort of prototyping phase, trying to figure out what type of designs to use.
Well, particularly for the Tyvek gowns, the face shields was pretty quick and easy because we did not design that model or anything like that. That was done by Prusa. And then we just went and jumped through a couple hoops to go ahead and tweak things just slightly so that St. Joseph's really approved that design. But that was something that wasn't us. The Tyvek gown, though, is
but we did still have to work with the hospital to figure out which type of face shield that they wanted, and to figure out where we were going to source the materials and how we were going to do the actual manufacturing. And again, that took about that first 2 weeks was just the sort of build up to, okay, now this is the design that they want. There were different versions, for example, of the face shield. And, at first they wanted one version, and then they kind of said, I don't know, this newer version doesn't seem as good. Let's try the old one. And eventually it just came down to, okay, well, whatever people make, like, we'll have a use for it. Because once we got the word out to the 3D printing community, they just started rolling in, sort of a trickle at first. It was like 20, 30 of the 3D printed headbands at a time, and we had some materials that came in for the elastics that were
non-latex elastic is actually kind of difficult to source. Yeah.
Right. And one of our members, I guess, found a supplier on the East Coast that was making this new elastic material that was it was pretty good. They ended up tweaking that a little bit and then sending us like 2,000 feet of it. So we have plenty. And then
which you would think would be on a spool, but no, it's like literally this tangled bag of
just a big bag. Yeah, a big tangle of elastic band in one big long string. String.
What could go wrong with that?
It's difficult to untangle elastic.
Yeah,
you can't really pull on it.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, we and then the face shield part, the actual protective shield, we had to source materials for that. We got those from the one what's that?
Calsac in Tucson.
Yeah, Calsac, right. Yeah. And they were able to ship them up to us. We had to work out a couple of logistics issues because the mall was closed and the UPS drivers weren't stopping by. So we had to go and pick it up from their, drop off spot, and got returned once. And, anyway, we figured out how to get the deliveries working. And then we started by just cutting it out on our laser. Mm-hmm. And then they ran out of the original material that we had used for the prototype, which was PET G. And then we had to shift to polycarbonate, and then polycarbonate is it's doable, but it's really difficult to cut on a laser. And we were pretty much at the maximum thickness we could use. And so
it slowed us down an awful lot.
It was going to be a really big bottleneck, but then the local businesses really made this whole effort work. You know, we've just been kind of like a focal point, but the Liftex, they're like a sign and banner company.
Liftex
and
Northwest.
printing.
It has to be.
Okay,
Sorry.
Liftex Northwest.
John corrected me, so.
Yeah.
And we'll include links to all the folks that you reference.
Cool.
For you.
Awesome. Yeah, they will all appreciate that. I'm for sure. So yeah, Liftex Northwest offered to do the actual cutting of the polycarbonate material on one of their big CNC machines, which made it, took a big part of the labor off of our poor little laser, and it sort of distributed all of the workload. And having that distributed sort of manufacturing gave us because we already had all of the people in the community with 3D printers that was distributed, and then having like a professional company that can just set it and forget it and let it run, and crank out a whole bunch of these in in real time. Then it was just a matter of assembly. And another local company stepped up, and at first they had offered to borrow some sewing machines and help with the cloth masks. This was Windermere Real Estate, the Whatcom County Windermere. They offered to basically use their conference rooms, which they weren't using for anything, to have their employees come in and do whatever we needed to help with the effort. They just really wanted to help out, which is great, because we said to them, okay, well, there's already like hundreds of people out there in the community that are sewing cloth masks. You can certainly do that if you want to, but what we could really use some help with is assembling all of these face shields. Because now we've got the parts to make hundreds and hundreds of them. And they stepped up and said, yes, okay, show us how to do it. And, we had a couple of, there were a couple of different little tweaks, things like there's a little, there's the original design has this little bendy thing on the bottom that's supposed to like shape the face shield a little bit and make it stiffer if you're using really thin stuff. But the stuff we had was like quite sturdy and about as thick as you could possibly get for the application. And so those things just didn't fit. For a while we were trying to put them on, and then sometimes it was just like, well, if they break when you're putting it on, the shield works just fine without it. So things like that. It was just a kind of learning process as we went. And then, they had like 7 or 8 volunteers that would do shifts, one at a time, or at least in one room at a time, one person in a room, I should say, and then just cranking out these face shields. And I think, it started with like, okay, now they've done a couple of hundred of them, and we took, our first order to St. Joseph's was like 150 of them. And then, by this week now, it's like we ramped up production so quickly that now there's like probably 1,000 of them that we've been able to make, and we have more of these frames than really more than we even really know what to do with at this point.
Can I actually back you up real quick?
Yeah.
So one of the things that's incredible is that there are so many people in town then that have 3D printers, and of course they instantly jumped in and stepped up. But they only had so much material on hand. And so it was the kind of thing that, like Jeremiah was saying, the first week or two, some people brought in 20, some people brought in 30, really overall with the combined effort, we were able to start getting about like 200 a week in just from our local folks, but it wasn't enough. And so one of the really amazing things is that the Makerspace is part of the Nation of Makers and also part of MIT's Fab Lab. And those two connections put us in touch with a Pacific Northwest group And given the fact that Oregon wasn't hit very hard, there's a lot of lovely people in Oregon that wanted to help. And so what they did is they dove right in and put their 3D printers to work for us. And so about 48 people, each of them printed 5 headband brackets, and then delivered them all to Brainwave computers, and Brainwave computers shipped them all up to us, helped them get them up to us. So just from Portland alone, we got over 200 shield brackets, which allowed us to then go ahead and give all of those brackets and then also all of the face plates that Liftechs had cut to Windermere, and they just went to town. And that was really terrific. Now, the interesting thing is that MG Chemical, which is a company that makes filament, it's actually just across the border. I think it's in Surrey, Burnaby. I'm not sure. It went anyway. But they ended up donating a fair amount of PETG 3D printer filament. And so what that meant is, as people were bringing us the brackets, we were able to go ahead and give them filament so that they can continue printing. And by doing that, I mean, like, I know James Mason, I think, came in with 112 like 2 days ago. And, you know, there's a couple people that are really cranking them out now, just locally. So that's been really, really impressive. Yeah.
Awesome. I was going to the follow-up question I was thinking of was, what's the sort of capacity that we have and the need, and what other communities are sort of next in line for us to
Yes,
assist?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because again, through that connection, you know, that kind of broader connection, we've been pretty much able to fill the Whatcom County need for the rigid face shields, as well as the gowns, as the Tyvek gowns. There are some people that need gowns, but the Tyvek gowns aren't going to be suitable for them. So we've pretty much filled the need here in our own county for those 2 items. But because we're now part of this larger group, we have the capacity to continue to make, and there are other counties that don't. And so we are now in a position to reach out and help Snohomish County and also Skagit County. And so there's been some email communications back and forth just this week, and probably next week we'll be launching into that and trying to help our other neighboring counties with that piece, which is amazing. The cloth mask need here in this county is still so great that we need to continue to focus on filling the need here first. But hopefully, you know, at some point we might be able to help some of the other folks as well.
How does
I wanted to, before we go too far into deeper other questions, I wanted to touch base about the gowns a little bit, because that was another production aspect that we did. So the face shields was this sort of collaborative effort with Windermere and Liftechs Northwest, and then in-house we have this really big space with lots of, you know, room for people to stay distant from each other, and we came up with a pattern that was based off of just a, you know, sort of off-the-shelf disposable hospital gown. And we started, it was one of our members, Anthony DeStefano, and I basically, you know, put our heads together and said, okay, what is this going to look like if we try and make this with local materials? And he said, well, I don't use Tyvek. And I looked up Tyvek, and I was just like, oh, they make house wrap out of Tyvek. It comes in a giant roll. We can get it at Home Depot. And it's basically the same material. It's not exactly the same material, but it's very similar. And it's, you know, most importantly, it's waterproof and also breathable. So that's the main reason that they use it for hospital grade gowns. It's not, you know, it's not exactly the same formula, but there's a lot of it, and it was in, you know, ample supply.
Right.
So we raised a decent amount of money pretty quickly for that effort, because a lot of people saw the need and, you know, chipped in on Facebook, which was, you know, fantastic, because that let us get our first big kind of bulk rolls of Tyvek out. And, you know, it's 150 feet long and it's 9 feet wide, and out of that we can make like 20 full-size hospital gowns. And we worked with the St. Joe's on the design, so that it was, you know, going to protect their back and wrap all the way around in the right lengths and the right, you know, size of the hole for the head and all of that stuff. And then we created this jig that uses these hinged, it's just it's basically just like half of the pattern on a hinge so that you can cut it out around it. You fold it in half, cut the whole thing out in 2 layers, and then boom, you're done. So it goes super quickly, which is great because, you know, just having basically 3 volunteers in the space working on the gowns allowed us to make, you know, like 40 to up to like 60 or 70 of them in a shift.
It's a 3-hour shift with 3 people. It was 65 gowns.
Yeah. And basically we could crank them out as quickly as we could go and get Tyvek. But, you know, Tyvek being fairly expensive, you know, once we started to see that our database that was set up to, you know, fill all of the needs in the community, which is probably something else Mary can talk about in a second here, is showing that, like, okay, well, we don't have that many more requests here. But then, so we sort of slowed down on production because, you know, we don't need to just make excess if we don't need it. But the neighboring counties reached out, and now what we're doing with them is to help them get set up with the patterns and sending them the files on the shape for the pattern and the instructions on how we set up our own production lines. So we can either go back into production to help them or help them set up the production for themselves.
Awesome. What a similar question on sort of capacity and community need, just to give people an idea of like what we have here in Whatcom, sort of how many gowns.
We've gotten to about, right now, I think we're around about, let's see, 15.
If it's 325 gowns have been delivered or distributed throughout the county, there's still some that need to go out.
We've made about 400 total, I think. About 400 total, and about 1,000 of the face shields.
Sure, and my assumption is these are all reusable and used more in the hospital circumstances.
Yeah, both of them are reusable. The funny thing that the hospital no longer wants the Tyvek gowns because they're noisy.
Oh,
now it is the kind of thing that, you know, they soften up in the wash. You can wash them and they soften up in the wash. But now that Oyster Creek campus has started sewing the gowns, you know, they're much higher quality than what we can provide.
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, and I'm sure this will just continue, right? I mean, these will be renewable resources that are needed, and we'll improve upon them as we go, right?
Well, hopefully we won't continue to need to repurpose other materials to make the true equipment that we need for too much longer.
And there is also a ongoing the effort with DuPont, the company that actually makes Tyvek, that we're looking into, which is called Tyvek Together, and they've actually released a new material that they're retooling their equipment for to mass produce that's specifically designed for gowns for the COVID-19. And, you know, they're going to be charging for that because they can't just, you know, pump out all of the, you know, material that it takes to make that. It's called 1222A or something. It's a new Tyvek. And if we can work with them, we can get a couple like large pallets of that. That would be enough. We can give it to Oyster Creek. We can send it down to Snohomish and even King County.
Awesome. What are there any current fundraising efforts that you're doing right now, or anything you'd like to direct people to look at that they could sort of help or understand? I'm assuming folks that have a 3D printer, you probably have connected with most of those folks, but maybe there's somebody out there that doesn't know that can reach back out to you and help.
So certainly on our both on Facebook and also on our website, you know, there is a place where you can donate. It just goes through the PayPal Giving Fund, which is great. One of the things that's been lovely is that quite a few people actually have donated, and because of that, we've been able to. Can I dial it back for just a quick second? We talked about a couple different businesses in the area that have helped out. There are a couple actually that have been left out. And so the first one I want to talk about is Gilmore Upholstery. This is just a local upholstery shop that, you know, no one told them to do it. They completely took it upon themselves to go ahead and start making face shields, given the fact that most of what they do, I believe, is for the marine industry. So they had a lot of window vinyl and a bunch of other things like this just on hand. And so they began making face shields just right out of the gate. And I believe that they made a total, I think it was 3,200 face shields. And right, yeah. And so they now have since stopped doing that and have moved on to do some other things. But it was a gargantuan effort on their part, and they really deserve some recognition for that. And I fear, given the fact that they've moved on, that might end up sadly getting swept under the rug. The contribution that they've made to this effort. The other thing is that with all of the cloth masks, certainly people are coming here. We're a great place to go ahead and accept donations of raw materials and things, but also the completed masks are coming back here. We're sanitizing them, packaging them up, and sending them out. But because there's so very many cloth masks and also quite a few groups that are involved in this effort, both Brio Laundry, which is on Alabama Street, and then Ferndale Laundry as well, have been accepting cloth masks, and through their hot wash and dry cycle up and sanitizing them, and also packaging them up. Brio Laundry surprisingly has been packaging them individually, which is brilliant for doctors' offices and things like that, so that you can just go grab one and run. And Ferndale, I believe, has been packaging them in 10s. And so they, up until this point, they had been completely volunteering their efforts because they didn't want to let their employees go or anything either, but it's a fair amount of cost on their part. And so with the donations, some of the donations that have the Makerspace, we've been able to go ahead and pay each of those organizations $1,000 for their efforts. Which has been terrific, and they would continue to do it for free as long as they are capable. But I just love the fact that we are able to go ahead and kind of help them sort of continue their small business, just the economic end of things.
Yeah, the community response has been awesome, like as we're learning more about. But obviously they want to keep their employees employed and all of those.
Yeah, it's not just a matter of going ahead and protecting people's healths, but I mean it's actually protecting people's lives, because everybody has bills, and we don't want the businesses to go out of business either, and which is another great thing that Oyster Creek Canvas was able to step into that arena and then work cooperatively with the co-op, because Oyster Creek Canvas isn't set up as a point of sale. So the food co-op stepped in to help them go ahead and fill that need. So again, just wonderful cooperative effort. The other thing that I think was left out a little bit was the restore resources, because in order to go ahead and move forward with the actual production of the Tyvek gowns here in our space, it was all done with labor and whatnot from volunteers through resources. So which is another nonprofit organization that has just been wonderful in this community for a long, long time. But so at the moment, yes, absolutely, we'll continue to go ahead and accept donations. If people have 3D printers, there are a couple other items actually that are really beneficial and helpful that people are starting to ask for as well. And so that's a great way to go ahead and step in and help out. We're accepting raw materials, like I said, fabric, elastic, bias tape, things like that here at the space, if people would like to do that. And then of course we are also accepting dollars. You can find the link on both on our website and also on our Facebook page. Another interesting thing that I would really like to applaud Rudd Brown for thinking of and stepping into is there are a lot of people in town that perhaps may be older and they have sewing machines, but because of poor vision or a variety of reasons, for whatever, they have the tool, but they're not able to actually help with sewing with masks. And so Rudd Brown has started a donation program where people who would like to donate their sewing machine have been bringing them to the Makerspace. Molly Chambers, who is absolutely a lovely person, works with Renee Shearer out of Social Fabric on Commercial Street downtown. And Molly Chambers, what are her specialty is tuning up sewing machines. And so people have been dropping off sewing machines here. Molly's been getting them all tuned up and then donating them back to people in the community that maybe do have the skill to sew and want to, but don't have the tool. And so that's just been really, really terrific. And actually Rudd Brown is paying Molly out of his pocket to go ahead and get those machines tuned up and back out into the community.
That's great. and sort of wildly creative, right? Like how can we sort of collect all of these
Yeah.
resources that might be underneath?
Yeah, there's a couple
and get
folks
them
out actually on Friday Harbor that also have 3D printers that have been 3D printing things, and then 2 folks out on Lummi Island that have as well. And so the fella on Lummi Island, he puts them on the ferry, and they ferry them over, and I meet the ferry and pick them up. And then, but the one that just cracks me up is the 2 guys out on Friday Harbor. One of them apparently has his own plane, and as does Rudd Brown. And so the 2 of them keep fighting back and forth because Rudd's like, no, I'll come and pick him up so he can fly, right? And the other guy's like, no, I'll bring him to you.
That's great.
They keep going back and forth.
And what a great excuse to get out, right?
Right. This is essential.
Yeah.
This flight.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, thanks again so much. Do you have a moment to do a little walkthrough, to give us a little tour is there anything happening right now that would be interesting?
Well, I mean, no, at the moment, because we've kind of slowed down a little with the Tyvek gowns, we've cleaned that production line up so that we can go ahead and do another sanitization, like cleaning and through of the space. So currently I can show you that Brent's doing that right now.
Awesome.
You could, Mary, you could also show them the big collection of the face shields.
Yeah.
We have.
Over here. So this is kind of exciting. It's a little bit not because here. One of the wonderful things that Windmere has done is not only assembled face shields, but then they've also individually, packed them, which then have also gone into Tyvek bags. That Tyvek bags have been made out of the scraps from the gowns. And so at the moment, you can see there's all these bags and everything. And I think in each bag there's 5 in some of these and 10 in others.
Yeah, I think most of them are 10.
Most of them are 10. Yeah. And then we've got some, some additional ones that have yet been
they're sort of in process.
Right.
And a few that are just different designs, because some people we have a little bit of a collection of stuff that people thought was like, hey, I found this one online and I printed out a bunch of them, and you can have them now, which is great too.
Well, it hasn't been quite as haphazard as that, honestly. So
right, that's a very small portion. But
there are a couple. So the Prusa design, this was the version 1 design, and a lot of people felt like when they were wearing this that it was squeezing their temples too hard. And so let me find the version. So they did an upgraded version, which I'm not able to find right now.
Mary, is it the version 3? I do have a few to.
Okay, wait here. I'm gonna pull. So here's version 3.
Cool.
So you can see it's much wider and so technically more comfortable, and it has these little flange pieces, which are super terrific when you've got the rigid face shield, especially if you are underneath it. If you are wearing a like a 2 canister actual respirator. But of course there are, people with big heads and people with small heads and the people with small heads felt like this didn't wrap around their face close enough to give them enough protection. And so the fact that people have made both models actually is super beneficial. The other thing that I love about this whole community of makers is that, we're all into prototypes and we want to make the best thing that's out there. And so the National Institute of Health, of course, is on top of some of this as well, and has been going through and testing out various models and designs. And the National Institute of Health themselves have gone through the testing and therefore truly recommended a couple different styles, which I'm gonna find. And so a couple people, instead of making so we've continued to make these 2 versions, the version 1 and version 2 that I've shown you, because those were the ones that the hospital staff actually wear tested. And those were the ones that also the hospital's infection control put their hands on and officially approved. So that's why we've continued to move forward with those particular styles. But the two other styles that the NIH has actually officially not just approved, but like actually recommends now. So this is one of them, and it's kind of an adapted version of the shield that we're making. It's just that it has this visor piece, so which protects you from anything that's going to be coming up and over the face shield. And so this is one that is actually officially approved and recommended by the NIH. So there's a couple people that are making those ones, and then this is also kind of a similar one that you can find on the NIH website, on the NIH 3D printing website. So I love the fact that there's been absolutely no wasted efforts by any means at all. All of the folks that have stepped up and tried to help out with any kind of the 3D printing have really been smart and clever about it and have done some research, which is terrific. So yeah, and then we have a whole bunch of, we have delivered a fair amount of gowns, but we also have bags of gowns that have been individually packaged in nice compact containers. And then we still continue to have our window where we're accepting the fabric and elastic, and then also people are coming and picking up some of the cloth masks out of that portion of the space. Yeah. So, hold on, Molly. Can I grab you for just a quick second? I'm gonna introduce you to Molly Chambers.
Should I put lipstick on?
No, it's all right.
I should probably stay 6 feet away though.
It's all right.
Hi. Hello.
So this is the lovely
Hi,
Molly
Molly.
Chambers, and she is the one who has been taking these donated sewing machines and getting them all tuned up and ready to hand out back to folks. And these ones are sitting here ready to go out into the community, which is phenomenal and amazing. So you can reach Molly through Social Fabric, right?
Yes,
pretty
true
much.
story.
Yeah. And that's just on Commercial in downtown Bellingham. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Yeah.
I'll
Molly.
sort of open it up for any questions. That was awesome. Anybody have any questions for Mary or Jeremiah?
You're still accepting the older versions of the face shields?
We are still accepting version 1 and version 3, yes, because those were the ones that were officially St. Joseph's, ran those two through their paces and approved those. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, as we start filling the need in Skagit and Snohomish. We'll need to go ahead and get some agreement with those folks as to which version they would like folks to print. One of the nice things about accepting both versions right now is that, each 3D printer has a different build volume capability. And the version 3, given the fact that it's more open, you really do need to have a larger 3D printer to be able to do that one. Whereas the one that's a little bit more compact, you can fit on a smaller printer, and that just allows more people to help.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and we'll of course be updating people as we start working with these other counties as to which ones are being requested.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again. All the afterwards, sort of collect all these links, and if you have some of those, please share, and we'll put those in the video for folks to follow along. And again, thanks to those organizations for all of their work and collaboration.
Yeah. Well, and Michael, you and I were talking a little bit last night about another one of the meetings here, and given the fact that there's been so many amazing folks and businesses and individuals in town that have been involved in this, it was actually Michael's suggestion that we reach out to them and invite them, to be part of this, because it was too short notice to try and pull something together for today, but it's really just been an amazing effort of local businesses and nonprofit organizations and individuals and then also the county and county council people and everything all together, really working as an amazing community within Whatcom County to fill the need. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I love the community success story
Yeah.
on that. So thanks again. We're wrapping up with Mary Elliott and Jeremiah McCoy with Bellingham Makerspace. Thank you again. Yeah, we had some sort of requests for applause, so that's great. Awesome. And again, we'll have links and resources of those organizations to sort of recognize and follow, and also learn more about what they're up to previously and in the future. And if anybody has anything to donate to the Makerspace, that'd be fantastic. Obviously finances, but it sounds like really collecting all the resources we already have in our community and putting them to sort of this critical use is sort of the current situation that is fantastic. Um, let's transition to talking with Ryan Shupe of COVID Virtual Tools, and we'll talk a bit about with the Makerspace. We've talked more about the let's call it the PPE component of this response, and I liked the idea of this yin and yang of the physical PPE and the non-physical technology solutions that the COVID Virtual Tools projects uh, presents. And Ryan's going to talk more about that. Want to give sort of a brief intro, Ryan, on of you and the project, and then we'll kind of roll into what you've done, and I know you have a little presentation for us. So shoot.
That sounds great. Yeah. So as an introduction, I'm Ryan Shupe. I work as a software engineer for a local high school or um, a manufacturer of orthotic devices. And this project came out of actually Canada. It's some family members of mine were involved with this, and they're in the healthcare worker environment. And so my uncle called me up one day and said, "Hey, do you know anything about this program that allows you to do secure one-to-one video conferencing?" And as working in healthcare as an IT, I was at first a little bit skeptical about it. The more we looked into it, the more it seemed like it could fill a need for it. So the idea is that if you've got, on the one hand, personal protective equipment that needs to be rationed and needs to be saved, one way would be to minimize the number of times a healthcare worker would need to go suit up and use all of the personal protective equipment to go in and care for a patient. And so I can share the screen, and we put together a website that kind of goes through and let's see. So is that a good screen share? Everybody see my here? So there's it's a crowdsourced program. It's free. It can be set up by anyone that's has access to old Android or iOS devices. And there's all of the information is on the website to kind of get involved and contribute to this. So the program that's been suggested and been used is the one called Signal, which is something that's been used by Edward Snowden, for example, to kind of be under the radar and not have any danger to himself there.
Encrypted.
So yeah, so it's already in use in an emergency room environment. They've gotten donations from large organizations, small organizations, and they have about 20 devices in use, and they found that can improve the processing that they have in several different ways. One of them is that before you'd have a nurse who was responsible for caring for up to 3 patients who may be being seen for COVID and really have to be isolated. With this kind of distributed device setup, you can have another healthcare worker work remotely and do all of the check-ins and the charting and all of that for
Mhm.
to support the healthcare worker who's actually responsible for that. So they were able to make people more efficient really in this in a higher volume thing. They're scaling it up. They haven't been hit all that hard, and so this is kind of presented as a seed packet for a way that you can take any device and set it up with a kind of an anonymous throwaway number, but it will be pre-configured to talk to one to one together. So for a visual, I have like a care package that you might say, hey, I've set this up, and they're configured to talk to each other, and you would find a healthcare facility that would be that could kind of take it in and use it out of the box essentially, right? So if you look at the interface for each of them, there should be just a single contact that you would just open up, and the healthcare worker could connect to the patient room, and the patient room could send messages back to the healthcare worker. They are configured to drop all of the messages and clear them every 30 minutes, and so it's kind of this rolling just private one-to-one device that could be just drag and drop into an environment and reduce all of the times that healthcare
Sure.
worker would have to go in there.
Yeah, reducing the exposure opportunities
Mhm.
and whatnot.
Yep. So it's worth mentioning that there's a ton of information on the HSS.gov. So knowing, speaking back to the initial skepticism that I definitely had, I looking into the way that the OCR and the HHS has been responding to this, and how it relates to HIPAA requirements. They are saying that for these types of response situations, they have laid out some guidelines on what actually would be still enforced through HIPAA and personal health and information guidelines. And so generally speaking, they say that anything like Apple FaceTime, Facebook Messenger, which is based on the WhatsApp, I think, Google Hangouts, all of that they kind of gave it an okay. And then there's other things that we still you would have to take into account of anything that might be live, right? You still wouldn't want to be at risk for any of that. So in the recommendations here, you would be working with a company, and you would acquire a BAA, a business associate agreement, in order for that company to be able to host any of the information that would be pertaining to the patients or the healthcare workers involved. The way that Signal is set up with having information really only stored encrypted on the one device, and the other device that's still on premise with the hospital, you have a lot more control over all of that information, and Signal servers don't ever see the actual information, and they don't take a lot of the metadata that some of the other services like WhatsApp and Facebook and Google Hangouts may. So the requirements for a BAA are a little bit less. They essentially don't exist in that model. Um, there's a lot of different ways that you would approach a healthcare facility and say, hey, is this something that you could take and run with? There's other solutions that are out there. This was one of the ones that was on the HHS site, and a lot of healthcare facilities are probably already using these kinds of things. So it really is it. We kind of see the need for it to be in maybe a smaller healthcare facility or even a nursing homes may even be a resource that would find some use for these. So yeah, I think it really is just a model that's there's information, there's instructions on how to set a device up. Oh, that one's, we'll find that. And yeah, I think we're at the point where we're putting it out there and saying, hey, if a healthcare facility is willing to take on any of the minimal risks of doing this, we can then create a community ask and get devices and set them up and provide care packages for them.
Awesome. I noticed you have Tiny MDM there. Do you want to speak a little bit about how that plays a part in the management of these devices?
Yes. So this was there's different ways that you would try to minimize risk for devices. One would be, hey, you don't want to have these signal be the something that you could break out of and then do whatever you want on the device. And so if a facility had some kind of a support that could set up a management solution where, for example, this one is set up, I can't get out of it. It's set up as a kiosk mode, and we used Tiny MDM, which was a pretty simple thing to set up with a Google account. And there's also ones that are at a larger scale for through Google itself. So this would kind of address the concern that a healthcare facility would have about any sort of other misuse of the device. So probably worth mentioning. There's just we've kind of created downloadable, laminatable, if that's a word, little infographics for to say that these, there's a consent process to go through with any patients. There's simple instructions on having patients be able to install their signal onto their devices, or just use one of these ones that's kind of like a community donated and freely usable device. And I probably didn't even mention the some of the use cases for it also include having the ability to have this be a number that if the patient's family wants to get in touch with them, they can install Signal on their devices and then have a video conferencing ability to keep in contact and address some mental health concerns as well, really.
Sure.
Yeah.
So obviously the organizations that already had a telehealth sort of solution in place aren't don't seem to be the target audience here, and I'm sure there's a huge amount of organizations that don't have anything like this, and this is sort of a kit, if you will, where they can hit the ground running and be set up fairly quickly. Are there any other use case scenarios in our location, sort of Whatcom and our surrounding counties? I know you said it was started off in BC. Is there any
Mhm.
local interest happening around here?
And not so much local interest so far. I think we've reached out yeah, through the channels that are available, but the I think it'll be something that'll be the more there's a need for
Mhm.
this kind of solution that's where we're the 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 project is kind of positioned to take it and go, okay, here's a, a model for a
Mhm.
solution that could work in this case.
Sure, and relatively DIY. It
Mhm.
seems like you're creating the resources that other folks can take and implement themselves.
Yep.
I wanted to
Yeah,
tell
jump in.
Ryan that you've done a fabulous job, because honestly, I told my mom to go ahead and set up an account and whatnot. She's not particularly tech savvy, and she did not find it intimidating or anything at all, which I think
Oh,
is really
great.
terrific, because anytime anyone that is not tech savvy, like, here's, anything that's crypto, anything, they're like, wow. And so I think that was really great, that, yeah, that the how-to sheet that you have there, it's very self-explanatory. It walks you through. She had no problem. And then the other thing that I wanted to let you know is that, since I work with the school district, and there are a lot of kids that have some pretty significant disabilities, and therefore they actually live in group homes and they don't live
Mhm.
with their families. That this is something that I think that, even after all of this happens and whatnot, it's really kind of an interesting way to go ahead and have family members be with each other, and keeping really nice and close, but also specifically, keeping the protection in mind of the student. So it's kind of interesting to maybe think about that as well.
Yeah, I definitely know that there's a lot of considerations that have to be taken into account for protecting one of the other things that I've done for about 5 years has been a mentor for the local high school robotics team. And so when the whole COVID thing hit, we were actually instructed to kind of not be interacting with students, basically to address all of those concerns while they figured out how that worked, which is challenging, but I completely see the need for that kind of consideration.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if there is a way that these kinds of tools can help address a need that's not related to healthcare, that would be fantastic. But it would be kind of outside of the scope of where we're at now.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure, and with Signal, I mean, anybody can start using Signal on their own with their own devices, that don't have to be in sort of the restricted healthcare environment. Um, and Signal's great as just a secure messenger, and Ryan got me hooked up, and we started playing with that a little bit. But I think the idea that I like about both of sort of the highlights we had today with the Makerspace and COVID virtual tools was the reuse of existing resources in a time where acquiring new resources was sort of unavailable or really difficult, and repurposing those things and putting them in the right hands, or the right hands, if you will, of the folks that can implement them or use them um, for the best good. So thanks, everyone. Did anybody else have any questions for Ryan or Mary or Jeremiah? Um, Happy to expand upon that more. And then we had a great session here. We went over a little time. Sorry about that. We're gonna keep it open discussion from here on out, and I'll kill the recording as we kind of, well, discuss openly on anything. So feel free to use this as a way to just connect and chat. Thanks again for tuning in to TAG Cafeteria. Hope to see you next week. Next week, we're talking with Northwest Innovation Resource Center about a project they're working on throughout the summer, which will be really exciting. I'm not sure if they announced it yet, so I'm keeping it tight-lipped, but look forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it'll be a good sort of community building exercise. So thanks, everyone.